Hi, I'm Eric Lubow, and welcome to Beyond the Belt. This is a conversation with Jimmy Park, a black belt out of New York, New York, USA. Jimmy is a bit of a Renaissance man, being a climber, photographer, and bonsai stylist, just to name a few of the things we talked about in this episode. He is also an entrepreneur currently running Opascope, his digital agency. I hope you enjoy our chat.
Hey Jimmy, thanks for being here.
Hey Eric, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited for this conversation.
Great, so am I. Thank you.
Yeah, so tell me, what was it like for you to get your black belt?
Oh, it was crazy. It was crazy. I was a brown belt for 2 years. Part of you feels like it's about to come, and then part of you doesn't know when it's going to come. And so, but it was a great morning. It was we just finished morning training session, and then there were a few of us who are sort of tournament players who have placed well in the worlds, and we are all sort of due for our black belts. And so, my instructor, Mike Jaramello, who's one of Danaher's first black belts, I think he is. He and Brian Glick, I think, are his first black belts. Anyway, so they brought in Renzo. He came in and gave us our belts, and it was crazy. It was an amazing morning, and you never think you're going to get it, and then when you finally get it, it's not anticlimactic, but it's definitely not what I expected or what I expected when I was a blue belt. In a blue belt, you think that you're going to get a black belt, and all of a sudden I hope I'm good enough to be a black belt in that. And then you're thinking that, oh, when I arrive at black belt, I'll be able to crush people in the room and that type of thing. And of course, by then you're already in that world and you're already doing well and competitive and tough in the room and that type of thing. But it's funny, by the time you get there, you you're at that place, but at the same time, now you've got this realization that there's so much more to learn, and so you arrive in this place, but it's so cliche, but it feels like it's the beginning of the journey again. And so I feel like I'm right at a place that I actually can learn jujitsu at a good rate and understand what's going on. So it was sort of an ambiguous feeling, but it was great. It's
Do
definitely
you
great
feel
to
like you
be there.
deserve it? Did you feel like immediately that you deserved it, or were you like, did it take a little while?
I think that I was a brown belt for 2 years, and people in my academy were like, "Hey, you're gonna get one soon. You're up. You're ready." And surprised you didn't get. So you hear some of that. I don't think, not from like an imposter syndrome or felt um, like I didn't deserve it or anything, but and it's not deserve or didn't deserve, didn't come into my mind. It's just that, oh my gosh, I'm at the beginning again. Is really what the feeling was.
It's so interesting. I feel like that's one of the most common things I hear from people is that it feels like a weight off your shoulders, and now you can start to enjoy the journey more.
Yeah, and I didn't think, and a lot of people say belts don't matter, and I think it depends. It depends. One, we're in a very no gi environment. I barely train with the gi just because I've rock climbed so much that with the gi and rock climbing, it's just bad for my fingers. But the belts are good. The belts sort of keep you in the game. The belts give you something that you sort of want to achieve. I don't. It's nice to have some sort of hierarchy system and that type of thing, but at the same time, it doesn't matter at all. And so, but it it, it was a good feeling. I think that it doesn't matter like when you're walking in the room and I think, oh, you're a black belt or that type of thing. But it does make me feel like I accomplished something. In fact, my first jujitsu instructor, who's a Renzo Gracie OG black belt, Pete Lawson, I trained under him until blue belt. I remember as a white belt, I was a white belt. I'm a couple stripes in, and I'm talking to him. I was like, I think I might want to go. for the black belt. And he said, Jimmy, you got to be a black belt something in life. And I don't know why that little simple statement hit me because, okay, so if I rock climb for 20 something years or whatever, who knows what it is. But when you sort of get a black belt, you're like, hey, I'm a black belt at something. It's good.
I mean, to be honest, that's kind of the basis for this podcast. That's kind of why one of the reasons I started this was because my thesis is that if anybody who gets to this level of black belt in jujitsu, that's a level of like commitment and like stickiness and understanding of information and all of that and passion and that almost certainly applies outside of jujitsu as well. And so I found that most people who make it to that level inside of jujitsu are like they got other cool stuff going on, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today too.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, with without the belt, I mean, who knows? Yeah, you're going to train, you're going to do this and that type of thing. But when you get there, it's like, I did it. It's sort of it is a nice feeling, and I think deep down inside, it's really hard for anybody to say it's not a good feeling to finally get
That's totally fair. That is kind of what I expect.
there.
I mean, you also trained at basically one of the meccas for jujitsu. I mean, how do you think that influences how you feel or how others may feel about that 2 inches of black fabric?
Yeah, the Renzo Gracie Academy, the Blue Basement, it's a tough room, and I was there during many years, and Danaher was our top instructor, and for any black belt, it doesn't matter where you're at or who your instructors are or what's the room like. Nobody gets to black belt without a great deal of sacrifice. I don't care who you are. You're going in every single day as a white belt. Jiu-jitsu is one of those sports that I say that you can get throw up tired. And almost everybody in their journey has tried so hard and exerted so much energy that they've thrown up or had to lay on the side of the mat trying not to throw up or something, throw up tired, and they've done that 100 times, and there's some injury, there's definitely pain, and there's definitely suffering, and there's discipline, especially if you're in tournaments, you've got weight, you've got all of these different things, and so it's and just to psychologically walk in a room as a white belt or in a tough room and just you get beat down. There are times that you just have to psychologically take the suffering. And so, but sometimes you wake up and you don't want to get out of bed, or you feel intimidated to walk in the room or whatever. To get to a black belt, there's an enormous amount of sort of grit to get there. And I say this in the Renzo Gracie Academy. So I trained a lot in the gi to blue belt and then moved from an affiliate school to the blue basement. And I remember I went to a couple places. I checked out Marcelo's, I checked out Enzo's, but I had a friend who trained under Danaher, and he was a blue belt, and he had trained there years before, and he had stopped training, but he said, hey, go to the Renzo Gracie Academy and go see John Danaher. He's like the Yoda of jiu-jitsu. And I said, oh, okay. So I went there, sat there, and I said, okay, and this is the place. And my instructor was a Renzo Gracie black belt, so it was an easy transition, easy decision. So I walk in, I'm like, okay, the no-gi class. I go into the no-gi class and get, I must have got tapped out 35 times that first day. And 20 to 30 times I got tapped out for at least 6 months. Never won. Never, not even won. Never even threatened somebody. Just lost every single day because one, it was a tough no-gi room. Two, it's a tough room. So add both of those together from a decent gi player. Getting beat down, I'm pretty good at taking suffering. Koreans, I mean, that's our culture. We're built to suffer, study hard, do whatever. But it was tough. It was tough to walk in there every single day and get beat down and beat down and beat down for 6, 7 months. It was tough. And so that definitely taught me something. That room teaches you that there are levels of jujitsu, and just to keep on going. And you sort of, there's areas of the room, it's a huge mat, sort of beginners are over here, and then the professionals were over here, and then the OG black belts are over here. And so there's these sort of spots, informal spots in the room.
That's such a great lesson, though, like for everybody to kind of look at that and be like, because, not everybody gets beaten down for that long. Not every room is that tough. But I feel like if you are the kind of person who gets beaten down is like, I can do this, I can keep going. That's also not just a different level of jujitsu that you'll end up at, but you're also maybe a different level of crazy
It
or
takes
sadistic, maybe.
yeah, it takes a little bit of crazy to walk into jujitsu, and then there's different types of crazy. There's you know obsessive crazy,
Yeah.
fanatical about sports crazy, workout crazy, tough crazy. Some MMA guys are just tough,
Yep.
just different breed of people. And then there's recovery, sort of, PTSD recovery, sort of, dealing things. And so but we're all crazy in some manner, for sure. To walk into a room to get beat up or to choke people out every morning at 7 in the morning is something
Do you have
a
any
little.
like, Danaher's kind of a legend. Do you have any like fun stories about him that kind of typifies the experience for you?
Oh, yeah. John he's an amazing teacher. I mean, it's a savant. Like, if you've ever run into someone who is sort of savant in something, in math and memory, or something, he's of that sort of genetic quality. And he's intimidating. It's and people, you read online and people talk smack and others. Just get in the room with him for a couple of days or weeks, and you'll understand. He he doesn't demand respect, but you have to respect the guy, and everybody respects the guy. And he has this calm tone when he comes in the morning, and and he's got a bad hip, and he's got a little limp. And so he goes in and he stretches on the side, and he comes in and he silently walks in the middle of class, and everyone sort of goes around them, and he goes and does these instructions. Then he sits in the front of the room and just watches. And the way that he runs the room is sort of the upper belts. It's a waterfall. He teaches the top of the room, the top of the room teaches the rest of the room, and it works. And the room works. But the I trained with him for 7 years or something, and then privates with him for 2.5, 3 years, and I didn't know if he knew my name. and but one day
That's a crazy
you
feeling.
you
It's gotta
start
be.
training, and there was this thing that I was trying, some guard retention thing, and I did something, and then he sits in the back of the room or in the front of the room, and then he'll watch and say, "Nice guillotine, Mr. Tonin. Nice knee cut, Alok," or we'll say something.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden I hear, "Nice guard retention, Mr. Park." And I said, "Did he say Mr. Park?" And then so you're at the end of the class, and you're going to do the shake of the hand thing. He sits in the front, and everyone shakes his hand, and black belt comes up and he said, "Hey, you got a call out today." I said, "Did I?" And he's like, "Yeah." And it's funny because the praise and the acknowledgement comes so few, and I think it's calculated that when it does, it's a powerful motivation tool. If you got a call in the morning, it like made your week. And so it was, but it's great to train under him. And yeah, there's a bunch of stories. I could talk for 2 hours about that, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't wanna spend too much time because I feel like he gets a lot of airtime from a lot of people, and I'd like to make this a little more about you, but I
Yeah,
just feel
well,
like your experience of him as not the top person in the room is probably one that doesn't get heard often, and that's why I was hoping you could share something.
yeah, he teaches the professionals, but me and my friend Paul, we would do um, privates with him every Friday. We'd walk in there, and they were interesting. You would go in, and it was nice because he then got to know us very well, and he's very friendly. When you're going up one on one, and you first you sit down, tell a bunch of funny stories for a little bit, and then he's like, "All right, well, let's. What are we going to work on today?" And sometimes you would say, "Oh, I'm trying to work on a guillotine and I have this problem." And he's like, "Okay," and then he just doesn't do anything of what you ask, and then he just goes into what he wants to do. But sometimes, and then sometimes he would come in, and we learned that on some days, I think that his hip or his knee would give him problems. And if he was particularly grouchy that day, we were a little scared to to do the private. And sometimes the level of jujitsu that he has is amazing. We would be doing something like Kimuras. And I don't want this to come out wrong. It wasn't like he was doing anything to prove anything other than the effectiveness of the move. But he would do, teach us to do jitsu move and Kimura, like elbow, shoulder, shoulder, even. If they're even in a straight line, the Kimura is tight. If your angle of the elbow to the shoulders and at like this, it's not as tight. So you bring the elbow line equal to the shoulder lines, and that is tight. And he would show you. And I felt like my shoulder was within 1 millimeter of becoming injured, and he would hold it right there. And on every move for 2.5 years, it got to the point where his sensitivity to anybody's point, he just knows it. It's the precision is amazing. But yes, and from the effectiveness of it, I was a blue belt, going to blue belt, losing tournaments, every third place or whatever, and so we one day he comes in, he says, there's three submissions that are everywhere: footlocks, guillotines, and kimuras. There are so many entry points. So I said, okay, I'd love to work on the footlock. So he showed us how to do the straight Achilles lock. And it gets it so tight that you can just explode an ankle. We work on that thing, we get this thing, it becomes sort of my move. And then I go to a tournament, and if I didn't get something, hey, what if they do this if I'm in Ashigarami? Okay, then you do this. And boom, then I would go back to the tournament and do it. And then so we learn from the precision of the footlock all the way to entry points, different entry points, counters, and just sort of like a tree from that middle of the, and then worked on that for 3 4 months, and then I would go test it at tournaments, and then I started to win. And then I started to win, and then I won blue belt worlds, I won purple belt worlds, all off this footlock sequence that he taught me. So it works. I was in the masters division and whatever, but
But
it's
still,
still, I was
yeah.
losing local tournaments to winning the IBJJF worlds, and it was on that footlock. And so he's amazing.
Do you feel like competition is important for hobbyists? Like, is that a thing that changed your world, or do you think it's not necessary?
I think that from what I've observed, the people who compete regularly advance faster. And it could be for a whole slew of reasons. For me, I progress faster for a couple of reasons. One, you enter the tournament and there's a goal that's not going to move, and you cannot cheat it. And it's like signing up for a marathon. You sign up for a marathon, you better get on that program. It's not like you're going to come in at the last day and then try to run that marathon and it's going to work. No, you cannot cheat that training. Same with a tournament. If you want to win, you sign up for that thing. And for me, it makes me want to go on the days I don't want to go. It makes me work on the areas, and very specific areas, with thoughtfulness and and attention. And so for the months preceding, you're going more regularly and reliably, you're training more deliberately. And I don't I don't remember if I've ever lost to the same thing twice. And
That's pretty good.
so when you lose, that silly cliche, you never lose, you learn, or you either win or you learn. It's true. You go in and you remember the losses more than the wins. And then so you go and you lose, and you come in the next week and it's like, hey, I lost to this, what should I do? And then some black belt takes like, yeah, do try this. And then maybe that doesn't work for you. And then you go and ask another black belt, another somebody, or somebody who's good at that particular defense. And then you get this vocabulary and all these different techniques, and then you go to apply it. Hey, get me in a Kimura. Let me see if I can get out. And then of those 5 techniques that are all good, maybe 2 of them work for you better than the other 3. And then so you try all these 5, and then these 2 work, and then you bring those to the game, and you've got 2 options for the next tournament, and you don't lose to it again. And so I think for all of those reasons, that's why tournaments make me, I know that I'm better if I sign up for a tournament and I train for 6 months. I would be better if I competed without, if I didn't compete. And so I don't really get nervous at tournaments.
Yeah.
And the reason why is 3 things, I would say. One, who cares if you lose? There's nothing reflection upon you. Nobody cares if you win or lose.
That's a hard thing for most people to understand. I mean, I agree with you personally, but I think the ego for most people makes that number one point very difficult to swallow.
Exactly. Exactly. It's first you realize nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's just like the Bronx Tale. Nobody cares. What were my other 2 points? Oh, the second point is, if you prepare 100% and you don't skip, and you lift, and you do your cardio, and you do your technique, and you go to class, and you do some tough rounds, and you do competition training or whatever, tougher rounds. You've done everything you can. What does it matter if you lose? You've done everything you can. If you lose, they're better than you. And if you don't, then you won. And so if you prepare as much as you possibly can, then 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 who cares? And then the last, if you know at the end, you 1, you don't care, 2, you've done everything you can, but 3, that you are better, even if you win or lose, but you're better that you entered the tournament and tried. That's the real goal anyway. It's not for a medal. No one cares, even if you win.
Yeah.
And so, what are you gonna win? Some local thing? Unless you're winning ADCC, who cares? So
I mean, as someone who doesn't compete, I kind of feel that same way. I'm always like, I'm not very competitive in general. And so when people are like, oh, I lost, I'm so upset. And I'm like, yeah, but you went out there, you did it, you prepared mentally, physically. So what? So you lost. No one here is going to think less of you. You're still here. You're still training. Like, keep your head up. You've done a lot for
exactly.
yourself.
And I see people going out there and competing. And this sounds sort of corny, but man, just getting there is a win. It is. Okay, so I don't get so nervous now. I've competed so much, and that type of thing. And I did at first, your first couple, it's so new. It's scary walking onto the mat under the micro. It's a giant fishbowl. Everybody's watching, and you're not. It's not like MMA that you're gonna get punched in the face or something like that. But it's a battle, a one-on-one battle. It's definitely exposing, but it's scary. But I tip my hat to anybody who has the courage to go into a tournament, and with the
Yeah,
right
same.
attitude and going having fun. It's a great great thing, and I would recommend it for anyone who wants to progress. Oh, here's the last thing about a tournament. You're in a training room, and yeah, you put a footlock on somebody or whatever, and they tap, and or you do something and then they tap. Sometimes these tournaments, especially the bigger the tournament, some people are training for months. Some people have bought a plane ticket, spend $1,000 to go there. They're not going to tap easy. And a lot of these people in the tournaments, they've prepared, they've lifted, they're the best person in their room at that weight class or age division or belt. You go in there and they're not going to tap, they're not going to give you something easily. And they're going 100%. White belts are tough and they're crazy, and some blue belts, because they're going 100%. They haven't learned to not go 100%. But that's what makes them a little bit tough and crazy. In a real situation, you go against somebody huge and they're a little bit tougher because they're just trying so hard. At a tournament, you've got a brown belt trying that hard, spent that much money, that much time preparing. They got their family watching, they got their coach watching. They are not going to tap easily. So to really test if your jiu-jitsu works and that you can really tap somebody out or control somebody, a tournament is when you really find out.
Yeah.
There are stuff that works in the training room and there's stuff that works at tournaments, and those are two separate things.
That makes sense. I've definitely heard that from a lot of people. What role does jiu-jitsu play in your life these days?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't like lifting and I don't like running. I don't like doing
Me either.
exercise for exercise.
Yeah, same.
And I saw some quote of some funny thing. It's like, I'm not trying to get good at exercise. And some people love it,
Yeah.
and all the power to them, and endurance sports and that type of, I'm not that type of person. And so one, I have seen myself. I'm 52 years old this year, I think. Yeah, 52 this year in May, um, and in decent shape. And I attribute a lot of that to, almost all of that to jujitsu. It keeps you in shape physically, which helps you mentally.
For sure.
It's definitely taught me how to learn the ways from drilling, figuring out what works for me and my body type, testing, experience, drilling, understanding the concept of something that goes from memorization to feel. There's that transition of you do something and you don't even realize that you did it. It's just because you've got a feel for it, and all that it's taught me how to learn and to be able to process something and develop a skill. It's taught me how long it takes to become an expert at something. Definitely
Absolutely.
definitely the grit factor. So I now, as a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I sort of look at my other activities like, oh yeah, in spearfishing, I'm not even a blue belt in spearfishing, and so I that's a sort of a measurement, and it allows you to gauge. If you go to like a hospital or something, they ask you, what's a pain scale of 1 to 10? And you're like, oh, it's a 7, because that relative scale is good. And so
Yeah.
the belts give you a little bit of a relevant scale in life. So it's
I
good.
use that. I use the skill scale for that all the time too. Like, I went out with a bunch of people doing karaoke a couple weeks ago, and they're like, "How
Uh,
good are you at singing?" And I'm like, "Not even a blue belt." Fortunately, there were like one or two people there who did jujitsu, and they're like, "Oh, you're that bad?" And I'm like, "Well, you haven't heard me yet, but yes, I actually am that bad. Thank you for noticing."
exactly. And it teaches you all these little things. Friendships and relationships, I always feel, are built on time, and how much time that you are spending around others. And in jujitsu, you are spending time every day, 2 to 3 hours a session with people for 10 plus years. And so you start to know personalities and really know personalities, and you can see, are they insecure, they don't want to get tapped out, or they don't care, they let you do something, are they a teacher, are they not a teacher, are they a know-it-all, or whatever. And so it certainly gets you intimate with a lot of different personalities and with so many people in the room, and it helps you read people a little bit as well.
Yeah, actually, that dovetails really well into talking about your career, because you've started a bunch of companies and sold some, and in order to do that effectively, at least in my experience, because I've done that as well, you need to be good at like reading people to the extent that you find out who they are, how they can fit in a team, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and I feel like I picked up a lot of that from jujitsu. I mean, is that sort of where you feel like you got an edge, or was that beforehand?
Well, I would say that I did business and management and coaching and entrepreneurship before jujitsu, but I would say that both have taught each other, and both are similar in different ways. In terms of work, yes, there's in jujitsu, there's the sort of person with a little bit of ego and fear, and so they're hard to engage. And you sit there grip fight for 2 minutes because they just want to disengage every time you get close, or they explode out of things to get tapped. There's that type. And then there's people that only want to, then there's the teacher, the ones that are very instructive and helps you and that type of thing. At work, in entrepreneurship, I've created these sort of personas. So, I think the best hire in the world is the organized warrior. The organized warrior, if you have an organized warrior in your team and in your company, that is such a gift. Find those
Can you
people.
define organized warrior?
The organized warrior is sort of like a mother hen, and they make sure that everything that you're hitting this deadline, this task, this follow-up was done. They're highly, highly organized, and they're worried about this thing, every task you're getting done. They can't sleep at night because if something's behind or something's not getting done, they'll call you, hey, I don't mean to say something, but I don't want to make anyone look bad, but we really need to get this thing done. And so the organized warrior is
That's interesting. That
yeah.
the thing that I think I look for when I'm hiring the most is like structured thinking problem solver, like systemic thinker. Like one of the characteristics of that might be somebody who is like a musician hobbyist, right? Where you need that like structured creativity. Or programmers, I look for those, like what are they doing that's structured creative, and jiu-jitsu is a great version of that, or really most martial arts end up being versions of that. But I think
Definitely.
my optimal version is often that structured creative thinker and problem solver.
It's funny when you say the structured creative thinker and a musician. One time, my business partner Jack and I were doing some interviews, and we came down to two candidates, and we were doing the interview. And I said, "Oh, it's candidate A." He's like, "Why?" And I was like, "She plays the harp,
Yeah.
and
Oh
she's
yeah.
and she's really she's an expert at it." And it's, why? The harp. Who picks the harp? And who
Yeah.
becomes good at the harp? Harp is a big instrument. It's sitting in a room. You're by yourself, tediously doing. It's sort of like a piano, but even higher.
Yeah.
And so that is a perfectionist. We're hiring the harpist. So that's who we hired. But yes,
Did it end up being a good hire?
amazing.
Yeah.
Really,
That
really good. Really,
I would have assumed that as well.
exactly. And then another one is the ruthless implementer.
Yes.
Having a ruthless implementer is a really good complement to the visionary. And so those are some of these personality types. There's personality types in the jiu-jitsu room and
Yeah.
definitely at work as well.
I like the ruthless implementer one. I think about that. I think in my head I call that like the dedicated executioner. Like they'll just
Hmm.
keep going, keep like the Paul Graham version of that is people who are relentlessly resourceful, and I like that term.
Exactly.
But I think oftentimes what I look for more than that is what I call the duct tape executioner, which is somebody who's like, hey, they'll get you something. It might be 80, 90%, and it might be held together with duct tape, but it's going to work. It's going to stay there, and it's going to be effective in ways that you're like, wow, I did not expect that to be as good or as functional as it is, but somehow they duct tape that together and it's still, humming along.
Definitely. I'm like the visionary problem solver, and that's my role, and I'm really good at it. But now I'm not a process person. Put me as a process person, I can barely follow processes, and so. And I'm sure in the jujitsu room, I'm sure you have these sort of personality types, like, oh, he's that guy, or
Yeah.
oh, they're one of those, or
I
something.
actually am that duct tape person. Like, I didn't know that that's what I was when somebody had described it to me a decade ago, but I look back and I'm like, yeah, that's me. And that's me on the mat too. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, this is close enough. And if it's not, I'll just like shift over to another thing. And it's like, if I don't quite get that attack, like, something else will be there.
It's funny that you say that on that attack thing, because anytime I'm talking with people in jujitsu on or in blue belts, and that transition to purple belt is at purple belt, I realized, or I did started doing this thing, that if I couldn't get a submission at 60%, it means something else is there to switch. So 60% exertion or switch. 60% exertion or switch. And it's very like that. And I think when that concept clicks in a player, that's that purple belt transition, that okay, don't the only way is through, that's the blue belt, and then that purple belt's like, oh, it means that's there, and it switches, and then once that's programmed, they're brown belt.
I'm the same thing, except I'm like 30 to 40%. If I cannot get a submission at 30 to, or a sweep or something at 30 to 40%, I move on.
And that's the black belt. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not there yet, but
Yeah.
I just very much. It's not that I mind exerting myself, but it just feels like I don't want to force something, and if I can move on, I'll find something, and I'll keep moving until something else is there.
Yeah. And I think that's why brown belts get sort of that lazy rap. They're not lazy. They're just moving around, and so
Exploring.
exactly. But
What one of
yeah.
the things that you had told me before we started recording was you had done like a whole bunch of very interesting campaigns. Like you have been a part of some very big name brands, and like
Oh,
how do you feel like that brand work has because just to contextualize for people that don't know, when you work on those big name brands, they have very high expectations of professionalism and execution. It's like, how does that work translate for you from somebody who is maybe not as process oriented and more visionary?
and I don't know how, or if, let me just answer the question, and if
Sure.
there is some sort of tie into jujitsu, there is. But
Doesn't have to be.
from a it's funny, sometimes working with the bigger brands, there's a couple of different cases. Either they are really buttoned up and efficient, and you're just tweaking some of those things, or they have a specific campaign that they're working on, that they need work on. Or you look under the hood, and it's crazy of how disorganized it is, and how much they aren't doing right, and there's so much infrastructure, and it's hard to get things done. And so there are many different cases of working on some of these sort of world class brands, or well known brands. But yes, it can happen in both cases. Um, and and you see it all over the place, and it's sort of surprising sometimes about how dysfunctional, under the hood, some companies are.
I think that's the thing that most people don't know in general. Like I've worked with a bunch of quite large companies, Fortune 500s, and they're every company is broken in their own way.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, as are humans,
Yes. That is that is an absolute truth right there.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite campaigns you've worked on?
Favorite campaigns? Yeah, there's so the area that I work in is digital marketing, and I first learned with organic search, making things rank in Google #1, which is like the real estate of the web.
Yeah.
And the way that I learned it was I was part of an acquisition of a public company that acquired an e-commerce shopping cart, and that e-commerce like a Shopify or something, and it had 700 websites. And I saw this one business that had those vitamins and supplements and a brand name that's out there. And they had 50 locations running onto this shopping cart. And they were doing, I think, like 40 grand a month or something like that. Then there was another company that was doing the exact same thing, but it was a mom and pop shop, 1,000 square foot location running this e-commerce shopping cart. And they were doing $750,000 a month. This was back in 2007 or something like that. And so I had just taken over this division, and I went to my developer and I said, "Hey, run me the revenue by month of everyone. I want to see who's the largest customer on our website platform." And when I saw that, it's like a tale of two cities. Huge brand, less 40 grand a month, mom and pop shop 750,000. So I called the guy. I said, "Hey, this is Jimmy Park, and and I took over the division, and I saw you're doing 750. How are you doing that?" He said, "Oh, you guys never call," because it was like Shopify. They don't call you or something like that. So I said, "How do you?" He said, "Oh, I'm doing it through the search engines." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And they said, "Well, we get ranked on protein shakes, and that brings us business." And I said, "Oh, I understand now." I just never thought about it.
Yeah.
And then so I called the second person, which was another mom and pop shops. And the ones that were winning the web back then, they were these mom and pop shops that were hacking search engine optimization. So I called the #2, same story. #3, same story, like a shoe store or whatever. So then I go back to the first guy and I said, "Well, how do you do it?" And he said, "Well, I'm not telling you. It's a secret." And I said, "Oh, I see that. Yeah, it's a competitive advantage." And I said, "Well, don't tell me what you do, but I have the code. Tell me what you need." And they said, "We've been asking for things for years, but they wouldn't listen to us." And I said, "Yeah, but I understand what this is. So tell me what you need." And they said, "Oh, I need this part of the code gone, and I add this field." So I went over to my developer, "Hey, Brock, go code this and get it to me in a week." So he codes these two things for me, pushes it live. And I call the guy, "Frank, go check." He said, "Oh, I put it in. Go check here, check here." He said, "Oh my gosh, you did it." And I said, "What's next?" And then I called the second person and the third, and the top 15 or so all had their own hacking little SEO guy there. And over the course of months, I started to learn all of their techniques, building trust. And so I had sort of a bird's eye view or portfolio of multiple companies while they were just doing their own little thing. Sort of like jujitsu back in the day. It was more siloed, and everyone was secret, and the no thing was out, and this school was good at this, and this school was good at that. It was like that.
You basically were just product managing at that point, right? You were just like doing your market research, finding the customers.
Yeah, I was just managing a web hosted shopping cart.
Yeah.
And then so I said, "I think I can do this." So I called this company that sold dolls, Barbie dolls, ceramic dolls. And so I called them and I said, "Hey, I think I can do this thing called search engine optimization. Have you heard of it?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Well, I'm going to do it for you for free because I just need a guinea pig. And all you have to do is do the sales." And they said, "Oh, yeah, we'll try it." So I did that. And then in 3 months, I had them ranked #3 on Barbie dolls, #1 on American Girl dolls, #1 on ceramic dolls, and they went from $4,000 a month of revenue to $400,000 a month of revenue. And then from that point on, I said, "Hey," I went to my CEO. I said, "I think we can do this. Here's the test case." I need investment. I want to hire 2 people. And they said, okay. And then I hired this smart kid out of Georgia Tech, Jack. And then we did that for a year. And then we left and we started our own company about a year and a half later.
Such a great story of like looking into the market and seeing what people are doing and what's working and then just doubling down on it.
Yeah,
That's
just
amazing.
stumbled across. But to answer your story, there's a company called Greenlight, and if you have kids, they have debit cards and for kids. And so you're 13, 14 years old, and instead of carrying cash, you put money on their card, and they're huge. If you go look at credit card for kids or debit card for kids on Google, they rank number one, but they didn't for debit cards for teens. I had kids at right around that same age, 12, 13, 14 years old. Kids, if you have a kid, you're thinking 6, 7, 8, and that's a little bit early to give them a debit card. You're still giving them lunch money or whatever. So I said, I think teens is the one you want to go for. And they didn't have the most simple thing. They weren't targeting teens. They didn't have it on their website correctly to do so. And this is a big brand. I mean, you go and check it out. They're against the biggest banks in the world, which are tough players in organic search. But you go now, we made a couple changes on the site, and then boom, they flew up. And now if you go Google debit card for teens, they're number one. And so that's a little bit of one. That's one of my favorite campaigns because it was such an easy example of something that you can change, and then boom, they moved up to number one in a very competitive industry. So that was a fun one and a good example.
That's great. It's so cool to hear like those kinds of success stories, because I feel like not everybody gets those kinds of like big successes in their career, and so to hear it is like, yeah, okay, you found something, you figured out the niche, you worked on it, and you got it there. That's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
and it's fun. Organic search is sort of fun. It's and we do paid search and all kinds of different things. In the last company, we were doing data analytics and it becomes very complex. But early in the game, it was, you're just sort of hacking the algorithm, and
Yeah.
it's sort of, you're on the fringes of this
With
industry.
with
But
all these like new AI kind of search, whether it's Perplexity or whether it's even ChatGPT or OpenAI, like with all of these things that are doing search in a completely different way, like what are your thoughts about where search engine optimization will be in the next 18 months?
it's definitely transferring. Every single year, they talk about, is SEO dead or organic search dead or is traffic dead? And I don't think so. I think that it's always going to have its place, but it's definitely eroding. And it's definitely, as in everything in digital now, it's democratizing in some sort of form. And, music was one of the first ones. And now, you used to have a record that you bought in a record store, and there were these names, and if you got a record, you were there. And and now on Spotify, everybody can toss something up there and make their own thing and record at home with technology. They don't have to run a studio, so it's democratized a great deal. Same with video. That's why people aren't even going to the movie theaters and or broadcast television. Now everybody has a channel. Now
Yeah.
it's you're fighting to sort of get heard. In search, if you take a look right now, if you go Google pretty much any question, what is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, or how do you what's 3 camera types that are good for photography, for bird photography, and what happens is you'll get this AI search result. and and companies used to blog about things. Let's say, for instance, they are a finance company. They would write things such as, what is GDP, or what's the difference between a 401k and an IRA? And they would write these things, they would get traffic and they would get business from it. But now that's being answered in that top block of search. And so now it's what's called a zero-click search, that they get the search, they get the answer, but they're not clicking anything. And so these companies that have these large blog strategies that were bringing top of the funnel traffic through these articles and informational type pages, they're losing 20-30% of those clicks now and having to really rethink of what they are going to do and what they're going to target.
Yeah.
And so AI on Google alone is changing a great deal, but for ChatGPT, early adopters have been using ChatGPT to find answer, but it's starting to move to a little bit more. It's starting to spread out a little bit more to others, but it's definitely more conversational search. But how it will be monetized, we'll see.
I think that's the interesting thing is that the monetization strategy changes. But one of the things that I like the most about this shift is that it switches from search to knowledge management. Like, because basically you're looking at search engine optimization was, hey, there's so much stuff out there. Give me what you think is the best Google or Bing or whatever your search engine of choice is, DuckDuckGo. And knowledge management shifts to like, okay, we know there's a bunch of stuff out there. Here's the synthesized top X answers put together in a response to your question kind of format. And I think that's a beautiful thing for humanity, but for capitalism, it sort of wrecks the market a little bit.
It definitely can, and I think people are going to buy the same amount of things. And so it's just how they're going to do it. And so it will be monetized, or monetization will still occur, but it's just going to happen in a different way. It's going to take less clicks to do so. And it's going to be more focused on good clicks and intent type searches for conversions versus question and informational type of searches. But I remember, being in search in Google, I probably audit 40 to 50 to up to 100 sites a month. And so, and I can see what people are searching for, and you become an expert search. Become an expert, and you give me something to find on Google, and I could probably do it in less searches than most people. And ChatGPT and a lot of these AI tools is people are getting good at learning at how to write the prompts. And so who knows if the technology will be good enough that we'll need to get good at writing prompts. But right now, getting good at writing the prompts or learning how to ask and the limitations of AI is where it's at now. And so it's learning how to use the tool to its best of its
I think
ability.
there's a really good side effect that's happening here that I'm a little bit happy about. One of the nice things about large language models, which is what most people understand AI to be these days, one of the nice things about it is that they speak the language in a way that we do. And so this prompt engineering thing is basically like, hey, person, try to communicate your request better.
Hmm.
Whereas, which I think is a really wonderful skill for more people to be getting, especially as more folks are spending more time on the internet or on social media or on their phones. It's like, learn how to communicate better if you want information, which is not necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion.
Yes, and ask a specific question, get that answer, and then build off of that. And instead of
Yeah.
18 questions at the same time to get some muddled answers, and you find that in conversation in humans, like I talked to my wife, and she's asking me 5 questions before I'm answering the first one. And so ChatGPT is nice that sequential, you get a little bit more value out of it. So.
I got to tell you, that's something that I struggled with initially when I was doing these conversations at first. My first few episodes, I can look back at myself and see myself asking 3, 4, 5 questions. And then the person's like, okay, I got to register that one, register that one. And now I've gotten better at like one question at a time, trying to be a little bit more sequential at the building concept to it. That's a hard skill, I think, for most people to learn. And I think LLMs offer that in a very intuitive and unintentional way.
Definitely, definitely. I have a business partner now who is amazing at AI. And the other day, I wrote something. He responded. I said, "Man, the way that you wrote that, you actually sound like an AI response." He's becoming influenced by the language coming back. It's almost like a digital accent coming back.
I think that's going to happen, right? The more, especially with kids who are using ChatGPT or any of these LLMs to like write reports, it changes the way they speak, and they start to use words that weren't necessarily used by children as often before. And you can start to see the influence of the AI type of speaking, and its vocabulary on native language. And there's like some really interesting etymologists that are talking about how this is changing the way humans speak. Like the two, I forget exactly where I heard it, which etymologist, I think it's etymology nerd, but he said there's two really big influences right now on the way people speak. One of them is LLMs and AI, and the second is people dodging the social media censoring algorithms. And so all of these new words that are coming up, like you can't say, kill, you have to say unalive. Like these kinds of things are changing the way people speak.
Amazing. That's amazing. Really, really interesting. The subject of how it's going to sort of change the world is so common and so over discussed. But I can say, having kids, my daughter is 19. I have a 19-year-old daughter, 17-year-old son, that are in this area of what are they going to study for college? What are their careers? And right at this cusp, that's a very interesting generation. High school, middle school for COVID and all of this, and now getting into this AI, thinking about what they're going to do. And I have to sort of think and talk to them like, oh, that career is going to be a goner. I wouldn't, that one, AI is already on it. And so what jobs are going to be out there and what careers are going to be out there with for the people who work with it on a daily basis. It's amazing to see the value and I haven't even been able to extract the potential of it. And what it can do is amazing, and we'll see what it does with the world.
But I really think that it will hopefully, or my hope is that it enables people to have more hobbies, right? And start doing things that they love more. Like one of the things that AI isn't going to be able to do is specifically like one of your hobbies, which is photography, right? Like there's no way that like sure an AI drone could fly around, take pictures, and find that moment, that whatever. But I think that there's like the nuance that humans find in beauty in moments, and I don't think that's going to be taken away by AI. And I think that there's like real value there. It's just a different kind of value, right? I mean, is that why you do photography?
Well, to answer that first question of AI, this is the first year, 2024, 2025. 2025 will be the first year, I believe, that photos will come out that are AI created, that even a trained eye will not be able to tell.
Yeah, that's already happening.
It's right now, probably 3 or 4 months ago, I could look at a photo and say, oh, there's an AI. Let me go look for it. Yes, there's actually, if you take a look at that hand way in the back, it's got 6 fingers. Or something that's a little odd that if you scan over it, you won't see, but if you dissect it, oh no, that couldn't happen. The shadow's going this direction or something like that. You'd find one tell in there. But in the last month or so, there's a couple of them that are like, oh, that will not be detectable unless you get into the pixels or something like that. 3 months ago, it would fool 85, 95% of the people. But those of us who are looking at it could find something. But this year, it's going to get past that. It's going to get to the point where we just can't tell. But I do think that there's always going to be a place for true photography. And I see it a lot with film. Film is making a huge comeback, and for multiple of reasons, but I think it's because that old process and feel and tones and grain, it's not what AI is trying to achieve. AI is trying to achieve that super precise, very, perfect. It looks too perfect, where film does not look perfect, and I think that that's why some of the trends are sort of moving back
Do
there.
you shoot with film or do you shoot digital?
I shoot both, and I go in spurts. Right now, I am in a film heavy cycle, and so I always have one next to me here, and so but I'm shooting probably 85%, 90% film right now.
Do you do the development yourself or do you bring it somewhere to get it developed still? Do you trust those people?
Yeah, no, I bring it in. I live in New York City and Brooklyn, New York, and so we don't have a lot of room here. And I have done it before, but it's not something that it's magic to do that, to process and develop and print your own film. I do print at home, and so I have a photography mentor, and his name is Dan Denardo, and he told me a something that he got from one of his mentors. They said, it's not a photo until it's printed, and it's true. To be able to see it not on the screen, printed in something, it's great, and it's also a great gift. So it's good.
How did you get into like street photography specifically? Because I feel like everyone's got their niche of what they like shooting, but like what draws you to street photography?
It's funny. I've been doing photography for 40 years or something,
Wow.
and 52, I think I started doing it between 10 and 11 years old or so, and always been fascinated by it. And it would be different things. And there was a point in time where I didn't want people in the photos, landscape or even sort of city photos, and I wasn't really into people. But living in New York, it's amazing. And so for 15 years, I had used the phone and I was snapping these photos of these things in New York that would happen, not even knowing that street photography was a thing. I didn't even know it wasn't a thing to me. I was just taking photos of interesting things. So, and then I looked back at those photos like, oh my gosh, I was doing a lot of street photography. I wish I was taking it serious. At that point in time, I was doing a little bit more bird photography. I was going birding with my son and landscape photography, climbing, and that type of thing. But over the past 3, 4 years, I've switched a lot to street photography. Then I realized that it was a thing. And then I saw a couple of documentaries. And I'm like, oh, this is really a thing. And now I'm heavy into it and starting it. But New York certainly helps that
You
living
got a lot
here.
of people watching that could be done in New York.
And it's never boring here. We've been here 15 years and never gets old. But you can walk outside and see amazing, and not only see things, but I've got this series that I'm working on three-legged dogs. So anytime I see a three-legged dog, I go take a picture, or even sort of two-legged dogs, the ones that are sort of paralyzed and have a little cart.
Yep.
So
The
I've
little
got
wagon attachment. Yeah.
yeah, so I've got this folder in on my computer that's three-legged dogs, and so once I get 10 of them or something, I'll probably post it. But and
Interesting random story. One of my friends here in Berlin has a dog, three legs, and named Kimmy. And I didn't really know. I just had met the dog at Kimmy, and then all of a sudden I heard them say the full name, and they were like, Kimura, come here, and I'm like, you named your dog Kimura? Like the three-legged dog Kimura? And they didn't know anything about jujitsu, so it was just accidental. But I was like, it's interesting that you named a three-legged dog a shoulder lock.
yeah, like rip the arm off or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Yeah, so but yeah, photography is a lot of fun.
Do you have a favorite photo that you've ever taken?
I don't know if I have a favorite photo. There's a couple of ones that personally that I like. Let me share two of them.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It was right when I discovered what street photography was, and I had this camera, and I was taking pictures in the city, and I stopped it right in front of the Flatiron Building. It was a rainy night, and there was an umbrella that was sitting there by itself, but it wasn't an exploded umbrella or anything like that. It was perfect umbrella sitting on the side, right in front of the flat iron. Night, it was raining. So I said, oh, that's a good shot. And I took the photo. Then I was walking down from 23rd down to 14th, going to this bookstore called The Strand. And The Strand, and I went to the photography section. I said, oh, let me go look at some photography works. And there's this one that is a collection of street photographers. And I go, oh, street photography. I guess that's what this is. And so I was flipping through and I said, oh, and it had a different name. And so I said, oh, it might be good to study other street photographers. So I buy this book and then I go home and I open up to the first page. And it was this photo by a guy named Edward Steichen. I think that's how to pronounce his last name, Steichen. And it was sort of the first street photo. And it ended up being the highest priced street photo ever sold. It's iconic. And it was the first page, the very first page, right there. And it's a picture of his 19, I don't know, 17 or some probably, of a guy in a horse carriage under a tree in front of the Flatiron building. I go to my pull, I said, wait a minute. I go pull the thing off my camera. And within 6 feet of where he took that photo is where I took that photo of the umbrella. I'll have to send this thing to you.
Yeah, please do. That sounds amazing.
I looked at it. I said, "Oh my gosh, that is so weird." And it wasn't, I don't know, some supernatural force telling me to go down photography, but it certainly was one. I said, "What are the statistical chances that I took that photo? I decided to go to the Strand. I picked one of the books off the shelf, and the very first page is of a photo of a place that I just took a photo 8 feet away at night in the rain. Both of them were at night in the rain in the same spot under the same tree. It was crazy.
Very serendipitous.
Yeah. And then another photo that is the first one that's pinned on my account is this photo of these bikers, bicyclers. It's like a bicycle gang. And there were probably 1,500 kids on bikes. And I said, oh, that's a good photo. I'm going for it. So they took over Park Avenue. And I think they do this once a year. I learned years later that they do this once a year, and they take over Park Avenue. And it's just a social online community. They meet up once a year and boom, they ride through New York City. There were thousands of them. And I was just walking by and I said, okay, so I run into the middle of the street and these kids are wheeling and they wheel past cars. And I mean, they can do things on one wheel that we can't even do on two.
Yeah.
So they're very good. So I said, they're skilled enough that they are going to use me as an obstacle. So I ran to the middle of the street. I dropped to one knee and I just stood like a river. I was like a little rock on the river and they were going past me. And I just sat there, got on one knee and caught a couple photos. And then boom, I got one that was good. And so that's the one on my Instagram. But it was definitely one
Easy Street NYC, the Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah.
Easy Street NYC on Instagram. And it's the first one that's there. And you can see that it's these kids wheeling by me, and there's 100 of them down the street. But it was one that happens by itself. You just happen to be there. But New York sort of gives you that.
There is always something going on in New York.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things I actually still want to make sure we talk about is climbing. Like you've climbed for 25 years. Like that's a lot of time to do one thing because you haven't even done jujitsu for that long,
Mm-hmm.
and you've already hit that black belt level. Like, how did you get into climbing and how did you stick with it for such a long time?
Yeah, climbing is a sport that around the late 90s has sort of opened up to more people due to climbing gyms.
Yeah.
I was living in Florida, sea level Florida, where it doesn't have a hill in all of Florida, and a climbing gym opened up, and went and took a lesson, and by the time we finished, I knew it was one of those things. There's a couple sports in life that are a couple activities that I think that people become fanatical about. And those are the ones that can be also therapeutic. Jiu-jitsu's one,
Yep.
surfing is another,
Yep.
climbing is one,
Skydiving.
CrossFit has that community aspect.
Yeah.
People are fanatical about it. And so by the time I was done, I didn't even make it home. I went straight to the outdoor store and bought all the gear. I knew that I was something that I was going to do. And that was just from a gymnastics perspective in an indoor climbing gym. And so, but from that, the owner of that gym was a very strong climber, of course. That's why he got into it. And his particular style of climbing um, that he enjoyed the most was multi-pitch traditional rock climbing. And what that means is there's different types of climbing. There's bouldering. Think of it like a sprint. You're only doing 10 moves, really hard, powerful moves on the ground. You fall, you land on a crash pad or the ground. No rope. Then there's sport climbing where there is in the wall, they've drilled a bolt in there and they've hung this thing, and those things can hold a small car. They're so strong, and you go and you clip, and that's what you see in the Olympics a lot is sport climbing. You climb up to something, you clip in, and you climb up and you get to the top and you lower down and you pull your rope down. But it's usually one pitch or one rope length up and then down. So think of that like the miler or something like that.
Yeah.
And then multi-pitch rock climbing is where you've got mostly two people, and then the first person goes up a whole rope length, stops at the top, and then on the way up, there's no protection. So you're carrying these devices, either some sort of stopper that locks into the wall, or a camming device with springs that expands the more you pull on it, and you place them in every 15, 20 feet. And then if you fall, that thing catches you. And then you get to the top of that rope length, and the second person comes and then grabs all that gear, meets you at that top there, and then you go up again. And so you're going up multiple rope lengths, sometimes 10, 15, 20 pitches. And so, and those are usually bigger mountains, um, ones that you find in like Sierra.
That's a lot of equipment trust. Like, how do you build up that equipment trust that stuff's going to hold you?
Well, placing that gear is definitely something that you learn from. And that first person, Jason, was a mentor of mine, and I went on a couple guided trips with him, and he had gone to college, I think at UC Davis, and had a lot of experience in the Eastern Sierra Mountains, where a lot of this multi-pitch climbing is, and it's great mountains, clean rock, meaning you're not going to, it's less chance of a rock falling and hitting you in the head and killing you. And the weather's really nice out there. It's predictable, which is another thing. Is lightning is a big danger out there. And so he learned out there, and then so I went on a couple guided trips out there. But you sort of learn. You get one of these devices. You sit on the ground. There's a little crack in the wall, and you figure out which size fits in there perfectly and what direction. And so there's a lot of different things to learn to be safe. 25 years ago, the equipment, I wouldn't say it wasn't as good, but it was earlier. It wasn't early in the career of the maturity of the technology. Back then in traditional rock climbing, they had a saying that the leader does not fall. And so you would be climbing well within your ability. So if you were a black belt, you'd be like rolling with a blue belt or something, and pretty
Yeah.
much you're not going to get tapped. And so
But material
the
science has come a long way in the last 20, 25 years. I mean, the ropes are much better quality. They don't get damaged as much, rubbing along the rock the way they used to. Water doesn't damage them the way they used to. Like, material science has come a very long way.
Definitely. And just like something like big wave surfing, new generations are just pushing the limits more.
Yeah.
And so with added technology, with more daring, with another generation, now people are pushing the limits of traditional rock climbing a much, much more. For example, if you've seen that documentary, The Dawn Wall, that was mostly traditional climbing. There was a couple places I think that they put bolts in, but they were bringing their gear there, but they were taking falls all the time on different areas. I think most of the places they were doing, they had bolts where they had a lot of the falls, but that they're pushing the limits, the younger generations, and so
Does that
they
mean
fall more
you're
and try
pretty
to do.
risk averse compared to the younger generation? Is that your style,
Oh
given just
yeah.
age and family, or?
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of these sports that looking from the outside, it seems like they're adrenaline filled or risky or things like that, but I'm not that brave and I am not that courageous at all. I just systematically build over time. There was this one, well, I went on one of my first trips with Jason, and I remember we hiked out to this mountain and we saw a mountain called Bear Creek Spire. And if you're watching or one day go Google Bear Creek Spire Sierras in California, and you'll see this mountain. And it was the first time I ever saw something that I said, oh my gosh, I want to climb that. I'm not a person who looks at something and say, oh my gosh, there's a beautiful line, I must climb that. I'm not like that. But this one, that something was there that I said I wanted to climb this mountain. So I did more trips, I did more climbing, and 10 years later, I felt that I was ready for it. And and I could have followed, had a guide and a leader, and I could have done it that day behind somebody. But to lead it on your own, where you're the one who's the sort of the senior climber and the one who's doing the route finding and that type of thing, I wanted to do that. But it took me 10 years to get to a point where I knew the mountains enough. And the mountains are big out there, and things can happen, and it's so big, it's like an ocean. Just finding where to go. Yeah, you have a little map that tells you go
Yeah.
up the left facing corner to a ledge, to a tree, to this, and you have all these things. But when you're on there, it's a different perspective. It's hard to see. You're just looking at the wall.
Did you open
And
any of those routes yourself, or was that you just
no,
followed the map?
no, I definitely
Okay.
followed the map to a thing, and it's not even that hard of a climb, but it's big. I respect it. And again, I'm not that brave, and so, but on the pitch before the crux pitch, which is the harder pitch of the 12 pitches, one's hard. One of the is the hardest. On the one below it, I got off route. And so I went too far to the right and I got onto this really blank section of really hard climbing. And I'd made a couple moves that I didn't want to down climb, and I thought I can make this thing up there, and I went for it and I fell. And it was the first time I took a fall on trad gear, and I fell, and luckily the rope stopped me right when my butt hit the ledge. So it was a soft fall, but I was sitting on my butt before I even knew what happened. Happened so quick. And
Terrifying.
yeah, it was scary. And then I had ropes got stuck. It took me an hour to clear this rope getting stuck. I had to fix the line, go down, Jumar back up the thing, and then that took an hour. So we got up late. So we started maybe at 4 in the morning, hiked to the bottom, started the climb. Took a long time. I was a little slow. Buck rope, off route, mayhem. Got to the top when the sun was setting, which is not good. And we had to go all the way down. My climbing partner, Jack, who was my business partner, the Georgia Tech guy, we became climbing partners, and he had just started his climbing career, but I eat a lot and he drinks a lot of water. And so we got to the top. We finally were making our way down, pitch black at night. Didn't know if we were going to walk off a ledge. It was, for us, it was exciting and not in a good way. And then we got to the bottom. We thought we were at the wrong gully. And then I ran out of food. He ran out of water. And this is how we know we were good business partners, because I was like, hey, you take my water. And he's like, you take my food. And when shit was looking bad, we were really calm. We were together. We were sharing. It was like, we're going down together or we're doing this thing. And then it was 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night. And we're like, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to find our camp. We might have to just spoon to stay warm. And we're like, all right, well, now we're going to be really close.
Yeah.
But then we finally found the camp and then got in and rolled in about 1:30 in the morning. But it was
I just want to ask you
day.
about that fall. Like, I know that when I used to climb many years ago and I would fall like that still kind of messed with me a little bit and made concentration difficult. Like, you took a fall that was a little scary, and yet you had to do all the unsticking and getting back on route and whatever. Like, how did that affect you?
Well, it's funny. The fall happened so quick. Sometimes you know you're going to fall, especially with sport climbing. You know you're going to fall, and then it's a little scary. With this fall in particular, maybe it was just because I was already sort of scared and I was off route, and you're alone on this side of it's like the side of the Empire State Building, and it just happened so quick that I didn't know. But by the time I finished and I got to the next ledge, we were at the bottom of the crux pitch. When I was bringing Jack up from belaying him from up top, my hands were cramping, and my hands my fingers weren't letting go of because I was pulling the rope, and you're gripping the rope, and it was a little cold, a little dehydrated. So he got to the top, and I knew the toughest pitch was coming up, but my hands were cramping. And I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I was like, man, my hands are cramping. And he's changing the gear and putting it on me because I have to take all the protection and go lead up again. And I was like, let me just get some water. And I drank the water, and we're a little, not nervous, but I had just fallen. Adrenaline was a little bit. So I said, this is crux. I said, I don't even want to think about it. Just let me get water. I'm going. I remember when I used to ride BMX bikes when I was little, or we would go cliff jumping in college. You go to the rock quarries and you jump off of like 40-foot wall things into water. I know myself, and if I looked at the jump, I would get scared and I would psych myself out. Or if I looked over the edge too many times of the rock quarry jump, I'd get scared and I'd get more scared. I'd get more scared. And sometimes on a big bicycle jump, I would look at it and ride up and go and check out the jump and look at and then I would psych myself out and I wouldn't do it. So over the years, I realized at the rock quarry, I'd take one look, I'd go back, and I jump. And so I don't think about it. And so, or when I did a bike jump, I would just ride to the end, not stop, turn around and jump.
That's a healthy
And
level of self-awareness.
yeah, so I learned that. So when I got to that pitch and my fingers were cramping, I didn't want to think about it. So I just switched gear and I just went. And luckily, it was an easy pitch actually, and my hands loosened up, and then we finished the rest of the climb.
What grades were you climbing to feel like you were ready? You know, like, because you said you waited 10 years and Jack was relatively new in his climbing journey. Like, what grades were you doing to feel that you had hit the right point?
Yeah, on the Yosemite scale, I could climb easy 512, and I would call myself a 511 climber, like comfortable leading 511 at the time. And then I could make it up a 12 or something like that, but I'd have to work at it. And so that climb was like a 5.8 plus. And so I was well below but the mountains are different. It's not the grade of climbing that's out there that I had to work up for. It was more the mountain knowledge, how you climb a multi-pitched route, and tried to reduce the rope drag, being able to find the right piece and the right size quickly, because over 16 pitches, you're putting in 5, 10 pieces of gear, and then the switching at the belay, you have to do it fast and efficient because you're going to do it 12 different times. If you take 10 minutes more per ledge, that's 2 hours of climbing, you won't get done in time. And so a lot of it was learning the rope techniques, protection techniques, and that reading the weather when you go, the route finding, all of that is what took a little bit longer. But at that time, the climbing was easy, was the
Yeah.
easy part.
That's interesting. I think that's not a thing that a lot of people think about is like all the a little bit externalities, but it's like the 90% of the work is preparation thing.
Yes, definitely. My mentor Jason, I remember he told me this, and this was before jiu-jitsu. But he said, "Train hard, fight easy."
Yeah.
And so, but he told me that when as a climber before I even started jiu-jitsu.
It's so interesting. You've said a couple times you're like my mentor for this, my mentor for that. I, I think that's I'd always wanted to have mentors in life, and I never was really fortunate enough to have them. And it sounds like you've been very fortunate. Like, what kind of role do you think mentors have played on your life?
I think it's one of the most important factors in learning something. And I've been both lucky as well as have put a large um, priority in finding good mentors in anything that I've done. And so I sort of I fell into it in a couple of times, like with climbing, and then learned like, oh, that was so helpful. I need to find a mentor for this. And yes, so I go out and I seek and have become very, very lucky in a lot of the endeavors that I have that I've had really, really good mentors. I spearfish and I'm not that good, but I just fell into it. We were in Hawaii on vacation. Wife and the kids, they want a rest day or something. I'll go, go, go. And they're like, I want a rest day. I said, oh, well, I've always wanted to try free diving, spearfishing. We're here for this, might as well get certified. So I call a guy and was set it up, but that guy couldn't do it. And then I went to a person he knew. His name is Mike Judd, lifeguard, North Shore. He's now a fireman, and this guy is like Rambo in the water. He is amazing. And so we'll swim off a shore, a couple hundred yards, 400 yards or something, shoot a tuna, which is a huge fish.
It is
You
a big
probably
fish.
shouldn't shoot without a float attached to the thing. Wrestled the thing in, carried it up a cliff. I mean, it's amazing. But he was a mentor in spearfishing and had several in jujitsu and a couple in climbing and
Do
one
you
in
try to pay that
photography.
forward? Do you mentor people also?
Yes, every chance I get, and from a business perspective, I've become a mentor to many people in over my work career, and that happens sometimes fairly easy as they work for you, and then they move to a different job, and then they'll call you a month later, hey, I've got this, or I'm thinking about this, or even during the time that I'm working with them. And so from work, I've become a mentor to a lot of people. And in some of these other sports, um, climbing probably with Jack, he may say that. But yeah, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy sharing. And so yeah, that's certainly a big part is being able to pay it forward. And I do it every opportunity I can.
I love that. I'm the same way. I was, like I said, I wasn't lucky enough or fortunate enough to have mentors. And so now I try to do my best to teach others and help them with the lessons that I never got coming up, whether it's professionally, whether it's jujitsu, whether it's, even back when I was skydiving, I did a lot of coaching there. And I feel like that kind of mentorship is lacking. And that's that sort of, service and purpose-filled life with service is one of the things that is, I feel like, lacking more nowadays than it used to be. When information was the way to access information was through people and mentors.
Yes, and those who can mentor in a really good way. Spearfishing with Mike Jutt, Dan DiNardo in photography, Eric Sherman in jujitsu. They have a way to give you just enough information and at the right time and push you, but not push you. It's a fine line. Good mentors are able to do that. Like, okay, let them figure it out here on their own, or here's one piece of advice, it's never really rarely advice. Sometimes it's like, hey, do this, and sometimes just watching them is a really good thing to do as well. But yes, it's enjoyable, and I've been very, very lucky.
I also want to talk about that bonsai tree behind you.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, I gotta say, I always see it in movies, but I never see anybody. I don't know anybody who has actually who does bonsai gardening. Like, how did you get into that?
I've my photography mentor, he laughs at me because one of the first things that we became friends with, and when it was with our shared love of trees. I don't know why, but I love trees, and my love of trees, those grand looking old trees, or the ancient bristlecone pine forest in over by the Sierras, is a place that I always try to go to. If I'm on a climbing trip, I'll sneak over to the White Mountains over there and see these trees that are 8,000, 9,000 years old, all gnarled and crazy. Growing up in Florida, these grand southern oaks with huge canopies and in the middle of a farm field, and it's just a single solitary tree out there. Or in Costa Rica, some of the Guanacaste trees out there, they've got these layered reaching arms and trunks. It's like 10 feet. It's amazing. And redwoods, the sequoias, all of them.
Yeah.
And so I really liked trees first. And the quote, he laughed at me, was like, yeah, I'll travel for trees. And so which is sort of odd, but they're really cool looking. And so
I
from
don't think it's
that,
that odd. I mean,
yeah,
everybody's got their own interests, and that's one of
ex-
the beautiful things about humans.
exactly. And so I, because of that, the art of bonsai is to make a small tree look like a 3,000 old year old tree. And so some of the concepts is, sort of a wide trunk that sort of tapers like that, like an old tree would, and has roots that spread and finger out for that foundation, and then that sort of that twisting, gnarled aspect to it, and then branches that reach out. And you want to start off with trees that have small leaves, because the leaf to the trunk and height ratio needs to be proportionate to make it look like an old tree. And so because of that, you're basically trying to recreate that. It's something that I decided to try and learn, and it's taken a long time. The learning cycles of a tree is long. You make a mistake, in August, you don't even find out sometimes that mistake until next March, and then you don't have a way to change it until the next August again. So your learning lessons are sometimes a year. or you make you this branch right here is a little yellow right here because I twisted it a little bit too much, and so now it's going to take a full year to recover that thing to it's perfectly green. And now I know how much I can tweak a juniper when it's at a top branch. And so, and what time of year to do it. So it's not weakening it before the winter time. So it's these lessons that sometimes takes a year to do, and maybe a year to three to recover.
How
And
long have you
so
been doing this?
about 27 years.
Do, just to use the grading system from earlier,
Okay.
are you like a black belt at that? Are you a purple belt in bonsai?
Yeah, I mean, I could work on there's black belts and then there's like world class
Right, of course.
black belts. I am not a world class black belt, and I'm a decent one. I'm tournament play whatever, but there are some world class bonsai people that are out there that know way more than me, and have spent their life doing it, or a 5-year apprenticeship in Japan and that type of thing. But I would say, yeah, I can handle myself in any room,
Yeah.
and can keep trees alive. And not only that, now I'm pretty good. I've got a pretty good green thumb, because once out you understand how plants are, then I can flower an orchid, the ones that you get at Home Depot, and then you can't get them to flower. I learned how to do that, or I got gifted some plant that somebody is killing, and like, all right, yeah, I think I can get this thing back in its legs or something like that. So yeah, I
What
think
does bonsai do for you though? Like, what is is it the patience? Is it the art? Is it meditative? What does it do for you?
yeah, it's I've never thought of myself as an artistic person. I wasn't born to draw. I'm not really good at, yeah, I can't sing, I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't do any of that stuff. But people tell me, or my family will say, like, "Oh my gosh, you're so creative with the photography or with bonsai." And but it's a lot of technique. It's a lot of technique of what to do. I just like it to make. There's different styles too. There's ones that look like bonsai trees. I like to make mine look like a tree, and so I know how a tree looks like. I know what a tree looks like, and I know the characteristics of those. For example, you don't want parallel branches. You barely see a tree going up with two branches going up here. They sort of stagger, and they go from larger branches that are reaching out for the sun, so they have to be thicker. You go from the bottom, and then they sort of reach out until they get light, so they sort of go in a little bit of a triangular shape. And so I know that. I know how they grow. So I'm able to recreate that into the tree, and it's sort of nice to be able to do that. And so I don't think it's creative, but some people would say that it is. So maybe it's a creative outlet to do something like that, to make something. I just like looking at them. you know
How many do you have?
I live in New York, so I don't have an outdoor area, so I put them on the fire escape. Most people don't realize that bonsai trees are outside 300 days of the year. You only bring it inside for a call like today, or I'll bring this in for a week and I'll work on it and I'll put it back outside. And so they're outside most of the time, so on the fire escape. So I think I've got 7 of them. Some of them, the oldest ones are 50 years old, 50, 60 years old, and so 20, 40 years old, that type of thing. And so they're some of them out in the major nurseries in Japan and Washington D.C., and they're 400, 700 years old.
That's
They're quite
crazy.
amazing. Yeah.
Do you, if somebody wanted to get into it, what would you tell them?
Start with an easy tree. Start with an easy tree that's hard to kill, that's
Like,
easy to recover. Like Japanese maples are actually fairly easy. Yeah. Korean hornbeams, I think, are a little bit easier too. If you break a branch, it's going to grow back. And they also change leaves in the wintertime if you're in the right temperate zone, and they'll fall color. So they're fun. and there's maintenance to do on them, and they're fairly hardy to work on. Junipers like this one here are the ones that are sold the most, but they're not the easiest. They're so I would say get an inexpensive tree, water more than you think, and give it more sun than you think, and then give it a shot. But you're probably going to kill a bunch of trees. It's,
Yeah, it does happen, I would imagine.
yeah, it's like getting tapped out.
Yeah.
It's that you're going to have to get tapped out, and you're going to have to kill a lot of trees to get to a point where you know where the mistakes are, and to get good, you kill a lot of trees along the way.
You have so many like hobbies in addition to your life. Like, how do you balance all of this? Like, some of them are very time intensive, like climbing, like jujitsu, and you have family and kids. And how do you balance all that?
Yeah, a lot of the things, jujitsu is constant all year round, 3 to 5 times a week, and I'm in there. If I'm not injured, like I am now with a popped rib, I've got to rest for like 4 weeks. Um, then I don't. My mother was born in a way that she didn't really. She's never needed a lot of sleep in her life. She sleeps 4 or 5 hours a night her whole life, and I got that gene, and and a lot of the times it's good. You get a lot of times to do things. Growing up, it was hard because it was always hard to fall asleep, and that can be stressful, not being able to sleep. People who can sleep well, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's something that I wish that I had, but I just don't. I sleep when I'm asleep. I probably get 2 sleep units per hour versus 1 per hour, like most people.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I'm actually
rest.
the same way. I have the same thing. I'm very lucky. I don't have trouble falling asleep, but when I'm asleep, I can 5 hours, and I'm 5, 6 hours. I'm fine.
Good to
Tops.
go.
Yeah.
Good to go. Yeah. So I wake up 4 in the morning, and then, but I learned to do that because it makes it easy for me to fall asleep at night. If I don't wake up at 4, I cannot fall asleep at night, and that's stressful. And so I just learned very young to I had to wake up early to not get that stress at night. So I have more time in the day.
Yeah.
It's one thing. I don't really watch TV. I don't watch fiction. I don't, fiction and entertainment TV is not something or that I do much. So that gives you a lot of time back as well. Climbing, I go to the climbing gym for fitness. And then to go outside, I usually go in the summertime. So I'm not doing a lot of trips outside throughout the year because I like
Yeah.
climbing in the Sierras. And the Sierras, the climbing season is depending on what mountain you're climbing between June and October. And so that's the climbing season. And so I'll go out there and do 1 or 2 big trips a year climbing. Spear fishing is only a couple times a year that I'll go. I'm not really good at cold water. So if I'm gonna go surf or spearfish or something, I'm gonna usually fly somewhere warm.
It is a mental challenge to get into cold water on a regular basis.
Yeah, I'm awful with cold water. I went in Long Island here and
Yeah.
I was freezing. We went like 100 miles out to Hudson Canyon and it was cold. It was
Probably
sharky
got a
cold.
wetsuit like a couple mils,
Yeah,
right?
I'm always
Yeah.
2 mils more than everybody else
Yeah.
too. So,
Is there any piece of advice that you kind of wish everyone knew, given all your varied experiences?
I think you hit one, and I was going to say it, and which is finding good mentors. Finding a good mentor can shortcut a lot of things, and and the wisdom and advice sometimes you'll sort of hear it and not get it, and you'll get it a year later. But it's a really good way to advance your learning. I would say finding, whether it's business, jujitsu, any type of activity that your skills development to find a couple of good mentors in that area is is huge. I would say that's a pretty good one. Some things I say to my kids is you get better on the days that you don't want to go. It's easy to go on
Yeah.
the days you want to go, and everyone goes on the days they want to go. But if you want to get better, and really good at something, it's you got to go on the days that you want to go, don't want to go.
Yeah.
And I believe it's from a frequency perspective to learn something. And let's just assume it's an hour or two every session. You got to go 3 times a week to get better, 2 times a week to stay sharp, to stay exactly where, and 1 day a week you're gonna digress. 3 days a week to get better. But if you go 4 days a week, you'll be 25% better than if you went 3 times a week. It's weird. You think about it in those numbers. You go 4 times a week, 3 times a week, that's 25% better.
I don't know that I get the logic, but I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I think there's a certain amount of like information overload or recovery or information processing that people need. And for some people, they might actually be way more effective at 3 days a week than they are at 4. Like for me, when I used to train 5 days a week, it was too much. I couldn't ingest that information. I couldn't do it. I went down to 4. I started progressing faster. And then the older I get, my body doesn't handle 4 days as well. And now I'm ideal at 3. And if I do a 4th, I can do it as long as I give myself good recovery after that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because what you just described is why I don't progress that to 5 days a week, because I think that there is a diminishing return at a certain point. I think during the learning stage, 3 and 4 days a week is a really good area. If you're in that sort of blue belt, purple belt stage, I think 4 days a week is really, really good. And you get really sharp on it, and you're not forgetting, but you have enough rest time. I think at the brown and black level, the difference between 3 and 4 is a lot less because you're getting so much out of those 3 days. And the difference of what you're learning per day is a little bit less. That you're not you're learning so much through a fire hose early that you can do that, and every day you're learning so much. But nowadays I go to class, our instructor Mike Jaramello, who's amazing. This guy knows. He's one of those guys that can see 12 moves in advance and set you up like a chess player on the first move, knowing that he's going to get you on the 12th one. But he'll teach something, and let's say it's 10 moves altogether in terms of the sequences that you learn that day. You do this one, you do 5, and then a counter, another 5, and say there's 10 or 15 moves. Of those 10 or 15 moves, let's say 10. Out of 10 moves, I probably know 8 of them. Or actually 9 of them. But there's one little thing where he put a knee that has nothing to do with the move that he's teaching. But I was like, oh, look how high he moves up there at that spot. And that's what I'm catching now.
Yeah.
And that little inch or 2 inches of where his knee placement from here to here can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so it's those little subtleties that I'm looking at now, which, so the 3 to 4 day, maybe a little bit less now, but
it's also knowing what to look for, right? Like we know what to look for when you're at the upper belts, and at the lower belts, you don't know what's useful, right? You might have a move that's taught to you by somebody who's got short legs and you have long legs, and you're like, I'm doing what they're saying, and you don't know that that's a thing that you have to pay attention to. It's like, oh, I need the long-legged version, or I need to deal with this long arm thing that's different, or my torso length that makes it so this move doesn't work as well. So we like at the upper belts, you kind of know that that's a thing you need to look for, and you're like, oh, maybe I need to make this adjustment, and then you can ask that question, and you're able to utilize the time and the person more effectively.
It's so true. When we would do privates with John, John would give us almost too many. We'd have to finish our private and go write it all down, or because we would record ourselves doing it right afterwards, or we wouldn't remember it. Whereas later, I was working with Eric Sherman, excuse me, who's about my height, my body type, and trained under John for years, has a photographic memory of jujitsu just the same way. So when I would ask him a question, instead of giving me 5, he would give me 2 or 3, and all 3 of them were right down the pipe into my game. It was a very efficient person to train under and have as a mentor. But yes, the body types are different, just like the footlock sequence. It took me a long time to realize that in one configuration, I use this one game if they're the same height as me. I use another one if their legs are shorter than me, if they're shorter than me. And I use a different one if they're taller than me. And so, and it's all different to be able to do it at a black belt level. Not saying that I'm anything great or anything like that, but those are the nuances.
Yeah.
It's different by height or person even.
Yeah, it makes sense. What are you excited for in the future? Like, what are you looking forward to these days?
Let me in jujitsu, and let me start off with jujitsu. From a jujitsu perspective, it's I've had a couple of these upper OG multi-stripe black belts afterwards. They're like, hey, now you're right. Now it's the point that you're really going to learn, but you're going to progress more in this year than you've done in the last 5 years. And it's been true. It's amazing. I don't know what it is that you're sort of, if you're getting 10% of your brain that you were unconsciously thinking about a belt or a progression or something, that's all gone, that it's just free and clear. But I'm definitely learning much, much faster, literally the day after I got my black belt. I don't know why, but for me, it's been true. And so I'm really looking forward to fixing a lot of what I would call holes in my games, or the areas that aren't strengths, to make them strengths in a long, systematic, patient way. And so it's nice. It's allowed some patience and some focus, and I'm ready for that in jiu-jitsu for sure. In in life in general, my kids are about to go into college and start picking their careers, and my daughter's found hers, my son will find his, and so it's sort of nice to see that, I would say. And the thing that I'm in the most accelerated and fastest progression is the photography work. And so I go out and I'm out shooting on the streets 20 hours a week, and studying at home another 20 hours a week. And so I'm really looking forward to doing that, which is going to be a good activity for me once my body starts breaking down in jiu-jitsu, and less rolling, more teaching. And
Yeah.
if I get into some sort of teaching of jiu-jitsu, which I'd look forward to in the next 10 years, I'll still have photography to go out and walk the streets with. Yeah. It's one thing that's funny about photography and jiu-jitsu. One thing that jiu-jitsu, everyone thinks you do jiu-jitsu and like you talk to your buddies or something, and they're like, okay, you're in a bar, like, could you take that person? And they're thinking like, oh yeah, now you're a fighter, you could do all this stuff. And yeah, we do the sport of jiu-jitsu, and yes, you go up to somebody on the street, it's going to help you a great deal. But heck no, I don't want to mess with anybody.
Yeah.
I know people that don't look like they could do anything, and have learned that they can destroy me in 35 seconds. And I've trained for a decade of
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu, and there are people that are, no, I don't ever want to do that. But it definitely makes me more comfortable in situations in which you never have to use jiu-jitsu, but there's something about how you carry yourself on the street. There's a lot of interaction with photography and street photography. I had this one guy who thought I took a picture of him, a homeless guy, thought I took a picture of him, and I didn't, and wanted to fight, and started to come be aggressive. And just because, not that I wasn't scared or wasn't ready or something. But being prepared, I was just like, no, I didn't take a picture of you. And it just made me calm. And then I think that they see that you're calm, and then they don't want it. They choose not to go any further, which is,
Yeah.
and that's happened to me probably 10 to 15 times. And I think it's because of jujitsu. I don't know, but I do feel it just gives you a little bit of a different demeanor that helps avoid stuff.
Calm in the face of danger, for sure.
Oh yeah, and my cardio is pretty good. I probably can outrun these people.
Which
Even if
always
I,
helps.
right, even if I think that, oh yeah, I could do whatever on some jujitsu thing or whatever, I would
Yeah.
rather run.
Same. I'm in the same boat, especially the
Yeah,
older I get.
exactly.
Is there
I get hurt
anything?
getting out of bed sometimes. I'm not gonna wrestle with anybody.
Yeah, I know. That's the funny thing. The more you age, the more you're like worried about the standing up the wrong way or getting out of bed or, getting off
Exactly.
the couch in an awkward way. Yeah, I know. Um, is there anything you'd like to promote?
Mm, yeah, I would love if anyone enjoys photography to come check out my Instagram account. It's Easy Street NYC, and I focus on black and white street photography, mostly New York City. If I travel, I'll do photos, but I really love the city and New Yorkers in general. And so if you like photography and want to see some photos, maybe give me a follow on Easy Street NYC.
Yeah, I'll link to it in the show notes as well. So hopefully people will be able to find it. Cool. Jimmy, this was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I didn't know. Wow, I didn't know the time flew by so quickly. And but yeah, I hope it's entertaining and helpful for others.
I never know, but I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about climbing, photography, or bonsai styling, feel free to reach out to Jimmy. If you find yourself near New York City, message Jimmy to roll, climb, or even take some photos. You can find his contact information and social media profiles in the show notes. And as always, thank you for your time and attention.